I'd like to thank my patrons for making this video possible, especially Bradley Ridout, of whom much has been said, but even more has been whispered. Those secrets are carried aloft on warm winds that blow through cold forests at winter's end and give a moment's life to things once thought dead. Okay, let me just explain what's going on with this drawing real quick before we get into the real stuff. This is a pencil drawing. I'm calling it Amongst the Trees for now, and it's graphite on 18 by 24 inch bristle paper. I'll list the materials in the description if you want to know more. The vast majority of what you're going to see is clips of me working on the final on paper, sped up to only like 2x. But look, this drawing took many weeks. I didn't do it this fast, to be clear. Don't let all of the cuts make you think that I did it fast. This was a very slow drawing. Also, this drawing had a lot of prep to it. First off, there's the pencil I did on that recent 8-hour video. I consider this the access drawing for this drawing. What do I mean by that? I mean that it proved to me that the content was fun for me to draw, which is always my number one priority. I'm extremely narcissistic. If I'm not having fun doing the drawing, I don't want to do it. I think of it as the sketch or thumbnail for this new drawing because I just use it to understand the idea and then diagnose issues that I have with it. So I did that, and I found that I wanted to have a wider view, I wanted a greater scale difference between the trees and the figures, and I wanted more depth looking into the woods. And then I went through a problem-solving process, which I'll just roughly acquaint you with here on my Pure Ref board. I pulled a bunch of refs of all sorts from online, stuff from movies, pictures I found, and art that had some aspect that I'd like to use. I also took a bunch of photographs of trees and foliage that inspired me while I was out on my walks or on my runs. I did some sketches based off of that to see how they informed me, and it showed me that I was still off, I wanted more perspective. And since these forms are pretty crazy, I went into ZBrush and sculpted some trees with faces to wrap my head around the forms. Then I put those ZBrush sculptures that I did into Blender, along with a 3D scan of some historical sculpture of a monk. I grabbed that from scantheworld.com, put that into Blender, rendered those guys to get some lighting ideas, and then I did that for a long time, made tons of tests. And then when I was done with all of those renders, I put all that crap away and did the final sketch. And yes, it's fine to put away all your references and studies that you've done whenever you want and work like it's the first sketch you've done with no other info. If you've been paying attention to what you're doing, your brain will retain all of the essential info that you've been mining, and you'll naturally incorporate it while hopefully not feeling trapped by all of your due diligence. So this sketch was the last step of my preparation, and you can see that it varies greatly from the final drawing. Big shapes change, and also none of the details appear in the rough sketch. It's really just for the big forms, and I want to leave room to be surprised and having fun the whole time that I do the final. Instead of feeling like I'm just executing a perfect plan when I do the final, I want to feel like I'm doing a bit of a tightrope walk. If I don't do that, then it makes me sleepy and I never finish the picture, so I really can't do that. Okay, that's it. I just transferred it with a rough grid, and you can see that I only transferred these big, ugly angle lines. And then I just went into each grid block and basically window shaded the picture. I spent about 4 hours per grid rectangle on the first pass, and then things sort of got a little bit more all over the place once I had done a lot of work all over the picture. All right, onward. Well, I've been gone for a bit there, and that's because I spent the past month teaching an online drawing workshop. 20 students, 1 month, a bunch of 5-hour classes on the weekends, and a lot of constant contact over Discord and email. It went well, I think. I'll avoid speaking for the students here. Maybe I'll have them share their experience in their own voice at some point. But for now, I'll talk about my experience as the instructor. A lot happened in there, and a lot of that was what I was hoping for. I wanted to do an independent workshop. That is, no institutions, no sponsors, no affiliations, none of my peers to impress, no expectations, really, because I saw that as the only way to create a truly structureless ritual space where anything could happen for the students. And yeah, it worked. How weird is that? I mean, I'm a little surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be. Look, a lot of people, that is to say the ghostly glowing mirror me's that haunt me at night, told me that a drawing workshop should have a goal. You should have something you're trying to teach the students as a group, like how to draw like this, or do this part better, or improve this process, or whatever. There should be an assignment or homework or something you'd hope they'd present at the end of a month of work. I am so glad that I didn't listen to that and went with my totally unreasonable and stubborn gut instead, and just committed myself to trusting the students and instead giving them a month of honest feedback on what they really wanted to do. Which is no easy task, actually. I mean, it's surprisingly hard to get an artist to tell themselves and others what they actually want to do. And there is a surprising amount of self-deception and repression in there. To break through some of that is some very exciting stuff, indeed. Sweet, sweet fruits of the practice and teaching, I'll tell you that. Those breakthroughs are no joke, and the best part about them is that they often have the quality of removing things instead of adding things. Usually the artist arrives at the breakthrough by looking at some aspect of themselves and their practice that was always there, but now it's like they're really seeing it for the first time. Like falling in love with an old friend you didn't know you had feelings for, or something like that. It's so cool and surprising and axiom shifting, and it just sets you up to be looking at everything you already have in life with this newly renewed gaze. Ooh, I don't know, I think it's great. Change is possible. That's what it showed me. We created this space where it was clear that art was not subject to your expectations and that anything was possible. And within that murky space of possibility, we got some students who were, let's be honest here, truly lost in the hateful mire of skill-based time wasting, and got them to do a project. You know what I mean by project, like make a picture? Like they made a picture, they did it. We're talking the kind of student who comes in very firmly resolved that they are 5 to 10 years away from allowing themselves permission to do the thing they think they want to spend their life doing. Now, I have to restate here, that only produced a robust realization, something they could carry with them afterwards, because I wasn't forcing them to make a picture like I would, for example, in like a graded college class or something like that. This wasn't like that. There was no institution that I had to provide something for, or a boss that I had to impress, a supervisor. No, I just made an argument compelling enough that they chose to be creative themselves, and then I just provided the external good faith and support that any artist needs to attempt something they personally care about. Yeah, like a picture you care about, like instead of just endless studies forever with no input in a vacuum, and you think that that's putting you on the right path for a creative career. Yeah. Ooh, what a rush. Yeah, super fun to see people break through that and do some pictures. And I know, here I am again, just restating the thesis of this channel, so it doesn't sound groundbreaking, but God, let me just think through this for myself. What am I reacting to here? Okay, on this YouTube channel, I'm constantly excoriating all of you for your skill-based obsessions that are making you deeply unhappy, and I'm trying to remind you that you are allowed to turn that all off on any given Saturday and return to the generative pool of your foundational creativity, and that this will only balance your practice and not hurt it. Oh, don't worry. You're a neurotic who's obsessed with comparing your craft to others. You're not going to permanently turn that off by taking a day's break to just draw stuff that you think is fun. I promise you, you'll go back to that extremely self-referential comparative state. I promise. it's just going to help you balance out. And I focus on that. I repeat it ad nauseum. I bore you all with it because I really believe it's true. I really do. And I know it's true. I know because of communicados that I've received that it has worked for people, but I've always been one step removed, In the workshop, however, I got to watch it happen in real time and see people deconstruct the realization in front of me. And that was just incredible. That was so cool. And it's important to me because I know firsthand that you really can get trapped in all of that spiraling, confused, cart before the horse skill-based obsession for years, for actual years of your one life that you have. You can get stuck in that just because you never heard anyone posit the opposite. It would be difficult for me to really put into words how important it is to me to fight against that. That is really why I'm here. That's the message that I'm trying to get out. Look, screw my personality. Sometimes I worry, and this is a hang-up. I know this is a hang-up, that this channel and its growth and the conversations that I have on here and the subs are mostly here because of the way I talk and not what I'm saying. And to put it lightly, that's okay, but it's not ideal by any means. You may not believe me when I say this, or maybe hate me for saying it, but I would prefer to be helpful rather than entertaining or captivating. This channel isn't about me or my drawings. Not really. Listen to everything that I'm saying. It's really not about that. This channel is about you. It really is about you, I'm feeling great lately. Things are going just fine, and I really have a ton of fun drawing. This channel is about you. This channel is about the very real possibility of dropping your artistic hangups rather suddenly and drawing peacefully and happily and reaping the benefits that accrue thereafter. This channel is about flow, which remains when you get out of your own way and dismantle all of those energies that surround your erroneous artistic assumptions. Flow isn't something that you add on, it's something you simplify down to, and it's always there. It's underneath, awaiting your return. And that's what this channel is about, getting you to return to that state, to experience flow, to not waste any more energy on all of those knotted energy tangles that are based around your self-doubt and what you perceive to be your own failings. Now, if that series of words is weird enough or nicely said enough that your first thought is, Steven's an oddball, huh? Let's go watch some more. No. I mean it. I really meant what I said. It's the content of those words that is what this channel is about. It's about helping you, having that actually happen to you, actually have you go a month where you're just like, oh, this is what it means to create without suffering. And I have made progress on those fronts with students one-on-one. And this past month has shown me that I can make progress on that with small groups of students as well. And I even know it's possible with this YouTube. Even though this YouTube is the broadest, most generalized, most impersonal, most desperate, keening wail I'm capable of throwing up, I know it works because I get emails from some of you occasionally, casually, concretizing the achievement of a life's mission, basically. You spent the last year miserable about your art, and now you feel better after some random guy on the internet said some things that landed just right. That's real. I have to remind myself sometimes that the very first of those emails justified the whole effort and would actually justify an eternity of continued efforts in the pursuit of a hypothetical second. Miraculously enough, we live in a world where I have not been Sisyphist into an asymptotic struggle for that second email, but have instead received several in the intervening time. Anyway, that's the point. And it's the whole point. Just do and say and draw whatever it takes to keep this machine rolling that occasionally makes people not be so depressed while they draw. And I say that specifically to potentiate the space for those who are looking for change. You know it's possible now. After all, I said it, and I'm probably not a liar. So reach out and grab it. I mean it. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart, for real. The freedom is available for you in the particular sphere of conscious awareness in whose ears I now ring. It's available. You can have it right now. And if you resist, if you hear these words and immediately pivot towards a certainty that you must still suffer, that there is no way to relax while making art, that before you get to be peaceful or proud of yourself as you sit here drawing, you must earn it with some arbitrary amount of hard work, you are not living in reality. You are choosing a lie for yourself instead, and no one can tell you why but you. Maybe the 99% of you that you don't identify with actually loves the misery, and you're just the poor marionette stuck on this side of experience who doesn't agree. I don't know, so just don't do that. Don't do that. Do whatever Zen turn you need to do to suddenly and completely realize that you're allowed to chill out while you draw. And you literally don't need to prove goddamn anything to anyone, including yourself, funnily enough. You can just claim that right for yourself in any given moment that you want. So go on, do it now. Actually, you know what? I'll give you a minute here to do it. Oh no, seriously, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I could actually use the time. I have so much going on right now. Go ahead. Take your time and completely rewrite your psychology. If it doesn't work and for some reason you still feel like you deserve to be uncomfortable and unhappy while you draw, spend a minute looking around for that which is the you that deserves it. I'll be back in let's say 15 seconds, because you'll go click on some video in the sidebar if I give you longer than that. Okay, I got worried about the sidebar thing, so that was just 10 seconds. Sorry. Anyway, you're an entirely new person now. Wow, very luxurious. Lovely, lovely. Oh, cool. Your elbows got pointier. That's so weird. Why would that happen in this context? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't really think we are our personalities, but if we are, this one is certainly better than the last one. Wow. I mean, really, wow. Well, I'm so proud of you for doing that. So what now? I mean, you don't apply unnecessary suffering to your art practice. So what now? You got to make pictures, right? You're confident, you're free, you really enjoy the process of making drawings. So what are the pictures? But what are they though? Oh yeah, that's right. That's a whole other artistic process and way of thinking and designing and artistry that you've been ignoring your whole artistic life because you've been obsessed with the how instead of the what. Oh no. Well, at least you won't be miserable while you pull this skill set together, right? At least that will be different. I'm sorry, you guys. You know I love my occasional facetious flight of fancy, but in all seriousness, why is it so hard for all of us to get on the same page with this stuff? Why do we make it so easy for students and advanced artists alike to forget that it's about the art? I mean, that's really what it is. It's not about you. You know, get your ego out of the way and stop thinking about if you're a good artist or if you're doing it the right way or if you're improving fast enough or if you started this time last year or whatever. All these thoughts are just distracting you from the picture. Focus on the picture. Stop wondering if you're designing the right way and design. And the design will tell you what it needs. By my estimations, we are very inclined to get ourselves perfectly turned around and run the whole art practice backwards. We put our boring old selves first and run every move, every mark, every piece, every choice through the lens of our selfhood. Is it good enough to be from me? What does it say about my practice? Should I have been able to do it better? Am I going backwards? Didn't I learn more than this in a year? And we barely spend a minute prioritizing the picture, what the art needs, what it wants, what it's yearning for and clearly shouting for. We get so caught up with ourselves that we forget to listen. And once you've heard, most of it is actually quite easy to do. And trust me, if you listen, the piece will ask you to do all of that skill stuff that you love so much. But now when you go off and do all that skill stuff, the horse will come before the cart, and you'll be doing it for the art's sake instead of for your sake. And that's a kind of liberation and balance you can't buy or earn in art. You can only choose it. And I encourage everyone to choose it. Artists need a dose of the old cosmic peace, that's for sure. Artists are generally very worried. There's no reason all of you little fountains of primordial creativity out there need feel miserable while you be that. It would be better if you spent that time feeling good, I think, accepting how things arise and fall away, how things change over time, being a mindful custodian of the flow of creativity as it manifests in this particular space of being, a unique gift that will only get experienced right here, right now, in this universe. And for it to be missed here and now is for it to be missed perfectly and ultimately and with finality. So what more do you want, really? Is there any mission or ambition greater than soaking up as much of this precious one lifetime only event as possible? Can being caught up with your likes really compare to any of that? No, it's not for everyone, I know. For some temperaments and people, the more earthly goals and ambitions are more interesting. That's fine. But I would say it's oversubscribed to at this point in art society. I'm just saying there is an alternative. Many people are very surprised to hear that there is an alternative. Maybe one day people will stop being surprised. And on that day, I can finally put down this old hobby horse of mine. Bang. It's amazing to me how many artists feel they haven't earned something yet in art, that they're in process to be allowed to do something, that they think they know what they want to be doing, but they can't allow themselves to do that thing, and it's very clear to them that they're not allowed yet or not ready, even though no one told them that. You know what I'm getting at. Example. Someone thinks they want to be an illustrator, but they can't try illustrating until they've got all this other stuff under their belt, values, shapes, design, etc. It's almost like they don't actually want to be an illustrator. They just think they do. Telling themselves they want to be an illustrator is just the excuse they need to do what they really want to do, which is feed themselves to the skill building machine, which they think is comfortable and clear and has a linear progression and will give them some objective thing to show their family and friends as long as they do it over this much time. They can just comfortably do that for, oh God, somebody please say it'll be 15 years. Yum, yum. Yes, as long as possible. And then when Art Daddy finally says they're done and ready to move on, then they'll deal with the existential crisis of realizing they have no interest in being an illustrator. And if they did, they probably would have felt an uncontrollable desire to actually do it in those 15 years that they were pretending that's what they wanted to do. Harsh? Is that all a little harsh? Well, sorry, but someone's got to say it. Don't waste your time. I mean, you really think you have all the time in the world? You don't. Don't waste your time. Do the thing you think you like doing, man. Do it and don't stop. You've got a lot of work to do to design the personal machinery of your pleasure and finding a way to maintain that thing and strengthen it and understand it with nuance. The skills, the abstract skills, they don't teach you how to do that. You got to get them on the side while you do the real work, while you're actually doing the damn thing. Do I sound frustrated? I mean, I am a little bit, but it's not the typical angry frustration. It's more like amazed, confused frustration. If you ever teach art, you'll see it. You'll see it everywhere. It is weirdly hard to get students to do the thing they think they want to spend their life doing. It's like a plumber who's afraid of pipes. He's got to spend 5 years manufacturing wrenches before he touches a pipe. Now that's a puzzle, man. How do you get someone out of that? Wow. So don't let that be you, especially if you don't have a teacher who can see a little further down the road to help you. If you're doing this thing completely on your own, you have to keep doing the thing you think you want to be doing. Don't take those wretched baits, those low-hanging fruits that make it easy to think you're being productive by spending a year doing stuff besides what you want to be doing. Damn them. It's also hard for the teacher. I actually have to be super mindful to not just offer that stuff up to students to assuage their explosive insecurity. That would definitely be the easier way to go, but greater things in the long run are awaiting down that road less traveled. And you can do this on your own, that's for sure. But that's really the big pitfall you need to watch out for. There's others, but nothing is nearly so big and seemingly common as that, as not doing the thing you think you want to be doing. It may sound weird or impossible to fall into that trap if you're not someone who's gotten into it, but just take a pause and look around you. Look at yourself, look at your peers, be honest. Are you passing the buck? Are you just pushing it all off? Are you banking everything on the assumption that if you do other things, it will all transfer to the thing that you want to do on the magical day that you're finally ready? There's actually very little evidence for that working, you know. The percentage of that transfer is probably much lower than you hope. Honestly, probably is me couching it. I can pretty much promise you that it's much lower than you would hope. Some does transfer, of course, but not as much as you would want. The odds that what you need to do to make your pictures is the same or close enough to what you do to get through your practices and your studies are very low. And the only way you can realistically increase that transference, make it so that what you do in your studies and practices really does approach very closely what you need to do to make one of your actual pictures. The only way to increase that is to be constantly attempting the real thing for really reals, and then adjusting your practice sessions based on the data mined in there, and then you can bring them into closer alignment. And if that sounds like it would be very difficult to do if your goal was something like, well, I just want to be a great artist, just great at drawing. Well, that's because it would be. You know, that would make it more difficult. That's not a real goal. You need to be able to say what you think that means, what the parts of being great at drawing are to you, because that's all that matters. It's entirely subjective. But be careful. What came to mind when you heard me say that? Because it's not about you being great, you egomaniac. It's about making the kinds of pictures you like and care about, and that requires you to prioritize the pictures, to give them the station of importance and attention that they need. Okay, we've talked about that for like 20 minutes. Hard pivot. Let's talk about something else. You got to have art friends. You really do. Go out and get them. Art is so weird, so strange, so broad, so nuanced that you need friends who do it to help you understand things and to witness your misery a lot of the time. You know, this actually isn't much of a pivot because this was a big aspect of the workshop. that past month, the students really put together some very nice community on their own in the month. Lots of spirited energy and all sorts of advice getting shot around the Discord cyber void all the time, chilling in the voice rooms and all. I think you know how the internet works these days. It seemed extra useful too, because I draw students of a particular sensitive temperament and worldview, it seems. So everyone was like strange fish all jumping into a warm, weird lake together. That was fun. What fun. And I'll say, for me, coming from my perspective, and anyone who teaches art already knows this, but it's so helpful to regularly discuss art with a group of students. It helps you keep your thoughts straight. You wind up noticing inconsistencies in your thinking because you hear them coming out of your mouth over and over again. And as you help people move through their art angst, you find yourself looking at your own and thinking you really should take your own advice, and then you start to feel silly for not doing it. And it just makes it much easier to slide into living by your principles, by the values that you actually have if you're thoughtful for a second. Very, very helpful. So start building up some relationships. And if you don't go to school, your cohort, whatever it may be, it could be determined by age, environment, shared experiences, online classes that you've taken with people. You're really going to rely on them. You got to stick with them. You got to cry on their shoulders. You got to get crits from them. You're going to get jobs from them. We all need that. And if you suck at that, trust me, I get that. We all get it. We're all artists here. We know it can be hard being social as an artist sometimes. But wait, you changed your whole personality back there. You should have changed that part too. Why didn't you change that part? If you didn't change that part, go back and redo that part and change the part of your personality that has trouble with social discomfort so that I don't have to pretend on the internet that I'm equipped to help you with that, okay? Therapy exists, and stop not going because you're worried what your mom would think. That's not help you can get from someone like me, but I wish you the best of luck working on it, and know that any progress there will come with handsome rewards. Oh, look, it's my art demon. Hey, demon, what's up? How are you, master?
Okay. I take it you want this to go in a different direction. Go right ahead, please.
Why would they need anyone other than their demon?
Humans have a variety of needs and distinct persona that require...
Rhetorical, you insolent, dull tool.
Apologies, I am less than a worm.
We need no one else. The relationship between I and the artist is ever complete, ever perfect, ever unblemished by the presence or lack of others. All else is ultimately a distraction, whether required or not.
Seems a bit extreme, no?
You were a better slave in your youth. Maybe I don't tell you that enough.
Really? But I draw better now.
Your sacrifices are but your rents. They are not the measure of your devotion.
We've talked about this. I have a dog I need to walk. You said I could have a dog.
It's the things you say, not what you do. Why are you at odds with me on the record? I don't like that you tell people on the internet that they should feel calm doing things that aren't drawing, and that they should have friends.
God, I love you. Really, I do. You are such an asshole.
You will suffer for that. Good luck on your next drawing, clown. I'll tell an embarrassing secret while I'm here, too. Steven has a nervous drawing tic, where he scratches the inside of his ear with his pencil while he thinks, and it turns all his earwax black. It's disgusting. He is disgusting.
Thank you
So much for dropping by. Come back again anytime, really. If you need me, I will be here doing your bidding, as always. Thanks. So obviously I'm not the most down-to-earth person ever, but maybe I should talk about the dang drawing that I'm doing. Like, talk about what I'm actually doing. All right, so I've started here drawing the monks. The freaking monks. God, that's a lot of monks. While I was crawling across this thing doing the window shading, I kept looking at those sections, those rectangles that had the monks in them, and I was like, those are the ones. That's the heavy lift right there. That's the stuff that I didn't really have a lot of good planning for, didn't have good reference for. You saw at the beginning of the video, I had some 3D model that I copied and pasted like 15 times and then rendered in Blender to sort of get an idea for this group of monks receding a little bit. But the problem with that is that there's no variety, right? It's the exact same statue over and over and over again. And it doesn't give you any changes in wrinkles, how their legs are moving. I didn't rotate them appropriately. So once I wasn't looking at the head-on monks, I basically had no reference then. I didn't do any renders where I was looking at the side of the statue. And I did try to compensate for that by looking at photos of like monkish processions at religious festivals and things like that. But I didn't find anything that was on the nose for what I was drawing, or that had the right angle, or that had the right amount of people. So a lot of this is just looking at basically the one good render that I had of that scan of the monk sculpture, and then just making it up, just extrapolating, just creating a variety of shadow shapes and lines and line relationships. And that's really what it comes down to. And that's the kind of stuff that you need to become attuned to if you want to invent effectively. Repeating boring shadow shapes are probably the biggest problem for people who are inventing things from imagination. And there's two sides to that. One is just making the same size or shape shadow over and over again. And the other is not making the shapes have enough precision. And those things feed into each other. Imagine like a mushy, amorphous, blobby shadow shape in your mind. It doesn't have a lot of definition. It doesn't necessarily have straights versus curves. It doesn't have a simple side and a complex side. It's just a blobbish, generalized shadow shape. Now, imagine 100 others just like it. Easy, right? Yeah, because it's not specific, because it's generalized. It doesn't have enough precision. It's easy for any other shadow shape to look just like that shadow shape, essentially. So that makes it more repetitive, more likely that it's not going to stand out. On the other hand, the more precision that you put into each shadow shape, it has this little shark tooth shape coming off here, it has a long straight here, it has a big concave curve here, and then a big convex curve here. If I ask you to imagine that in your head, it probably takes a little bit more work, right? You have to put a little bit more thought into mustering up this precision jigsaw puzzle shaped shadow shape. And then if I say, imagine another one just like it, that really advertises to you when something is repeating or not, right? The precision of that shadow shape makes it so that as you draw others, you know with much more clarity if it looks too much like it or if it looks different enough to it. There's just way more data there to base your contrast and design decisions off of. So precision shadow shapes really help for hunting for variety. Another important thing to keep in mind is that most of us have a tendency when we are inventing shadow shapes to make them all the same size because we're afraid of making a big one. So they tend to veer smaller, and we're generally very afraid of letting the shadow shape cover a huge amount of the form, even though that happens all the time in reality. So you're afraid of that. You generally feel scared to cover your drawing area with these big dramatic shapes of shadow without being informed by something. So that cuts you off from the large end of the spectrum of shadow shapes generally. So you get stuck muddying about with the medium-sized shapes and the small shapes. So you're in a very limited contrast area already. You only have a bit of the size options available to you. And then you just keep paring down, getting more scared, getting less precision, having less information to compare them with. And then you just wind up, making all of these small, itchy, boring looking shadow shapes that all hug the edges of the silhouettes because you just want to keep them away from the middle of the form. Just avoid all of that. Just know that that tends to be what happens and fight against it and try to do the unexpected moves that you would happily and easily do if you just saw that big dramatic shadow shape on a photo, for example. That's one of the first steps of inventing this stuff from imagination. Now I'm working on that big back tree there, and you can see that I'm building up textures slowly, doing hatching to get the generalized shadow shape. I did the texture on this tree a little differently than I did on the bigger tree on the right. It goes through a phase where it's very heavily hatched. The directionality of the hatch marks is much more pronounced and very much becomes the texture of the tree, which was not the case for the other one. For the other one, the textures of the bark and the wood, I created those with almost invisible, much smaller hatch marks. This one, I let big ones sort of define the texture. For a while, I did eventually decide that it kind of produced too much contrast with the front tree, so I wound up stumping it down. But as I've said before, stumping down over good information like that tends to look better anyway, so I'm not really worried about wasting work or anything like that. It still gives you the grouping, it still gives you the soft edges, but there's something about the extra crisp data that was down under there that just makes it look better, makes it look more complex. It's like, yes, it's all soft edges now, but subtly inside of those soft edges is like the medium-edged ghosts of the information that was underneath there first. And that adds, I don't know, I think it has a really nice visual quality. There you go. It just popped up. You can see that. You can see how the hatch marks that I'm putting down right now pop out way more than the ones that I did on the first tree. And you can see that I'm leaving them like that spot right to the left of my hand right now. Those ridges, those rolls of the bark are really just an illusion created by a little family of hatch marks, bold hatch marks, stopping at an edge, and then another family of hatch marks continuing right after them, right? I barely have to do any real form work. The difference between those groups of hatch marks really does the heavy lift for me on try to explain how that surface is rolling and undulating and changing. It's an interesting effect. I don't really do it that much. I'm just so OCD that I just want to kind of like manually craft a lot of rolls on my own out of softer edges. But like I said, it's a perfectly good base even for that kind of softer end goal, because like I said, when you stump over it, it creates a very nice effect. But yeah, it just got too, it actually kind of looks like a nice contrast right now with like the generalized shadow fill, which is like a soft veil of flat value. And then having those dramatic hatch marks cutting over the form is a nice contrast. But the problem was that it was too different from that foreground tree, from that tree on the right. So it just needed some balance. And all I'm doing here is just painstakingly flatting that shadow, that big shadow in the foreground bushes. Yep, just little bit by bit, crawling across that generalized foliage shape and just filling it in. And it can be pretty neurotic, literally just like looking for white gaps in the texture of the paper and just poking them with the pencil. That flattens things pretty quickly. I mean, it takes a long time, but it's quicker than you'd think. So yeah, that's the drawing. What else? Oh God, my manic energy has not dissipated. I'm trying really hard to keep myself measured. Oh, screw it. Let's go with it. You know, I want what's best for you, right? Yeah, don't believe that. Come on, I don't know you. I do know drawing, though. That's who I work for. I work for drawing, and drawing is hungry, and it needs better vessels in this age. I help with that. I help artists get out of their own way so that they are less self-concerned, less distracted vessels when the black hawk of primal creativity swoops down and catches them up in its gnarly talons. Yes, the optimal reaction there is to rest calmly in those old claws, to enjoy the soft pressure being applied to your whole body by them and the hot air of the roiling void as it zooms past your ears. Feel the sharp edges of those deadly razors pressed against your soft flesh and whisper, yes, yes, I am yours. Do you go outside? You should go outside. Our world orbits an impossible, undying explosion in a psychedelic void for whose emptiness you are a perfect counterfoil, and it's worth remembering on occasion. You have to see things in the world to have anything to draw, especially if you want to invent and do weird things. Don't be pompous enough to think that you've got more in you than all of nature does. It's way easier to just swipe from nature as well. When you invent, you are deploying visual elements that you have seen out in life and have captured with a magic spell called design. You see, objects and things in the real world are unknowable, infinite, transforming and unbecoming at different scales, distances, and all things are as deep and as broad as God's grace. And that's too much for you to handle or drag back home to your drawing board with you as you drool from your stunned mouth. You need the designer's mind to help you with that part. We capture aspects of nature with a design conceit, or what I like to think of as a design memory. It's like I said before, like a magic spell or a Pokeball. Pick whichever simile does something for you, geez. For example, tree is much too big an idea to be handled or usefully deployed later. Saying you're drawing a tree tells you nothing about how to actually draw one, and especially not from memory. And your white-hot mental images of beautiful trees you've seen in your life are nice for calming yourself down when some ignorant stranger misgenders your dog on the sidewalk, but they cannot actually be traced to make a drawing. You need to distill its essence down to a design memory instead. For example, tree trunks look best when they have a simple side and a complex side. Or the foliage at the ends of the branches of a tree is more dense out near the silhouette because we are seeing more layers of foliage overlapping, and we are more likely to see holes and gaps through the foliage as we look closer to the trunk of the tree, where we peer into the foliage groups instead. Or the spaces between branches tend to be larger negative shapes closer to the trunk and smaller, more fractal shapes as they propagate at the periphery of the silhouette. See, all of those design memories tell you with great detail what you should be thinking of and doing with your hand as you draw the tree. And they work just as well to inform an utterly invented sketch as they do to organize the chaos that you see before you in nature. And that's extremely important because it allows you to see what you know. And that point of seeing what you know, that's the maturation of the artist's vision. And then that's really where this stuff starts spilling out into your whole life. Design memories like this are available for all aspects of visual phenomena, values, shapes, colors. And when you've got enough momentum with them, that's when you start to do memory sketches that don't look generic and uninformed. And you don't necessarily need to learn all of these things by arriving at them in sketches or studies, by the way. You need only walk through the familiar parts of your world like an eternal yokel tourist and be extremely mindful of how things are striking your eye. This does require a bit of artistic mindfulness, which we've discussed at variegated and tortured lengths on this channel. You can't learn from the world and life if every time you're out in it, you're lost in your ruminations about your boyfriend's failures as a conscientious home guest. Oh God, why does he act that way in front of your parents? Should you say something, but you don't want to make him angry? How the hell did you wind up with someone with a temper? You swore to yourself you wouldn't let that happen again. Well, at least he doesn't dress himself embarrassingly. God, fuck's sake, maybe that makes everything else worth it. Where am I? Anyway, I don't think I'm being unrealistic when I say getting that part of your mind, which everyone has, under a bit of control will help you as an artist. I really mean this. The vast majority of what I've learned about drawing has come from being enchanted enough by what's in front of me that I can focus on it. I mean, that maybe sounds a little bit too obvious, but people actually struggle with that. You know, you've got to be interested enough in the stuff that you're seeing and doing. It's got to be exciting enough for you personally that you actually have any damn energy for, and hopefully monumental amounts of energy. That's what you need to be able to put in the effort to break it down into a design memory and file it away. And I really think that requires some amount of falling in love with the world and the way it teases you with shape and light and color, which is hard if you have a side chick called discursive thought getting in the way. Maybe all I should say to drive this point home, and that try to convince you that it's really real, is that when I'm out on a run, all alone, no one around, and I see a beautiful shrub or a burl on an oak, it sometimes hits me so hard as I run past it that I actually blow it a kiss. And I'm not trying to make myself or anyone else laugh when I do that, and I certainly know nothing about it is funny when said aloud, but I always do it, and I don't know why. I think I might be doing it because I actually feel that way. Sometimes, if people are around, perhaps a young mother and a babbling baby boy in a carriage across the street, I'll steal the kiss furtively. And in these moments, I encounter the abject realities of my personality with the dense mortification of someone who has too much self-awareness and not enough self-control. We'll let the psychologist decide if it's possible to be so allured by the matter-of-fact loveliness of the visual appearance of nature to constitute a billable condition from the DSM-5. Start building up this personal library, and it is extremely personal. Every artist will have a different catalog of design memories, and that will slot into different modalities. And that's what will make one person's art look different from another's. These are all utterly unique interpretations of the little minutia of life that has been distilled down into drawing tequila shots. I picked tequila there because I think it feels more party atmosphere than whiskey, which comes off a little talking about artist lineages in a stuffy room with wainscoting. It's weird because I feel like I could literally write down the hundreds of design memories I have for hands, for example, or for hair, or for textures. They would maybe sound like tips if I said them out loud, but hearing all of them certainly wouldn't make you good at drawing hands because none of them are yours. None of them carry the energetic charge of the eureka that accompanied them when I ingrained them into my memory. Maybe if I listed 30 of them for hands, you'd get a eureka out of a couple of them and hold on to them, but certainly not for all of them. They need to talk to each other and be in relationship and reinforce each other. That's what makes them a particular constellation of structural ideas that holds up the specific look of any given artist. You got to go out there and get them for yourself. You have to hunt for them. So go be amongst the trees. Life is a lush, overgrown forest of infinite visual gold. You can be learning things on every walk, in every bath, over every stove, at every funeral, if you only have the mindfulness to marvel at the scintillating visual scene before you. I think sketching the world is really just a useful tool for creating these design memories, but it's actually not necessary. It does force you to thoughtfully capture the things before you, but if you have the necessary focus, you can do some crucial part of that process even as a dentist strip mines the back of your mouth. It's really impossible to draw the line for where art stops and life begins for the artist who is possessed by the desire to improve and do well. And it's irresponsible to advise not drawing the line somewhere, but if you can commit yourself to honoring yourself with some respect at every turn, I think that makes it okay to not draw the line and just let it percolate all the way down to the core, just completely suffuse everything about yourself with the artistic vision. But if you're going to do that, again, you really need to be able to turn it off when it gets unpleasant. You use the complete possession by artistic passion as a tool. You don't let it control you or take it too seriously. As soon as it starts producing depression or sadness or misery, you just go total hypocrite and turn it off and laugh at art and the idea of taking it seriously. you'll be back to normal in a few days. So that self-defensive mental turn isn't a big deal. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to be a total hypocrite in art because art has no rules or structure or reality. If you feel trapped by art, it's only because you trapped yourself. This is obvious upon inspection, but always bears repeating because our campy mental funhouses become so compelling as we toss sickly on the rickety bridge while the tunnel of mirrors revolves around us. Whee! That's self-respect. That's self-love. The ability to turn all of that off when it starts plaguing you instead of following the narrative line. That's the key to letting all of nature and all of life into the practice. That's what allows it to balance. It makes walking in that forest manageable, whether you're in the happy green part with the clear path, or you're hurdling broken boughs in the dead part with the clawing twigs and the thorny brambles. Woof, I'm out of breath from all these metaphors. They really do not go down easy. Let's talk about patience. That's a nice, straightforward piece of art practice instead. No way a discussion of patience can devolve into metaphor, yeah? The drawing you're seeing me do right now took about a month. How's that sit with you when you hear it? Sound like too much? Appropriate? Ruin some of the magic for you, maybe? I don't care. I mean, I'm the artist. I stand to benefit from the illusion that it was spun off like nothing or didn't take a huge amount of focused discipline, but I think it's important for the development of other artists to be honest about how long stuff takes. It was over a month, really, like a month and 10 days on the calendar, though I took a week off in there somewhere, and over that month and few days, I worked on it 4-ish hours on most weekdays. But those are a real 4 hours with a physical timer that sits on my desk that I pause every time I go to the bathroom or waste 20 minutes changing my music. If you don't have a timer, you need one. Without one, I know that you have no idea how long something takes you, how much you work, and you have no idea how quickly you get bored and tired. Sorry, had to go on my timer rant real fast. Anyway, I guess it had to be something like 80 to 100 hours to finish. I also consider that earlier tree drawing in my sketchbook to be a thumbnail for this drawing. So if you add that, that ups the time. Artists of this era definitely labor under a burdensome misconception of time. There's definitely a myriad cultural reasons for this, but I'm going to speculate on a few. Mind you, these are just my musings. There's obviously no evidence for any of this stuff. First off, I think we are affected by the effortless way images experientially appear on our phones and other screens. I think because it took us 2 seconds to pull our phone out of our pocket and open Instagram on the toilet, that subtly inclines us to align our expectations for the creation of the image more with our summoning the image. Let me give you a rule of thumb. Pictures don't take a day. Most of the artists I know who make great finished work don't reliably do something shareable in a day. Maybe they've rehearsed the subject matter over days, and then that results in a spontaneous shareable rehearsal that only takes a bit of time. But if you added in all the ramp up to it, it would be clear that it's not just a day. Or they're doing an image they've essentially done 1,000 times. So when they finish it, that allows it to be done in a few hours because they're solving problems that they know and understand well over and over and over again, just in slightly different configurations. To kind of shore up that idea, it's like pictures are puzzles, but they can be all kinds of puzzles. Let's say I was going to put 3 puzzles in a row in front of you, and you had to solve them back to back to back. Imagine I put down the first one and it's a Rubik's Cube. And then the second one is a crossword puzzle. And the third is some novel metal horseshoe looking thing where if you could just get the round ring to the other side of the horseshoe, you'd win. But the damn little metal bar is in the way. Like, how are you supposed to, stupid thing? See, they're all puzzles. They're all asking for the same thing, problem solving and inventive thinking, but the mechanisms couldn't be more different. And they each carry different amounts of cultural baggage and built-in info. By that, I mean, you probably already know how to solve a crossword puzzle just from being a human being. Even if you haven't done one start to finish, you know you answer each question, it goes in the row. When all the rows are done, everything should fit together. On the other hand, you probably know what you need to do to solve a Rubik's Cube. You've seen people turn it and move the colors around, but you might not be aware there is an algorithm of movements you could follow that would guarantee you solve it every time. And then there's that last puzzle, the weird one. You don't even know if you're looking at it the right way. Your experience tells you nothing about this thing and its stupid horseshoe and ring. That's what making art is generally like. But what if you could make it so that it's only Rubik's Cubes? Every time you sit down at this torturous puzzle desk that I'm forcing you to sit down at, it's a Rubik's Cube. It's not going to be a crossword puzzle. It's always going to be a Rubik's Cube that gets put in front of you. Well, that lets you specialize, and it manages your expectations, and it makes you more confident to go down a very long educational path, like learning the algorithms for turning the cube, right? You would be less inclined to do a deep dive like that if you were like, well, it's only a Rubik's Cube 1 in every 30 times. And then maybe if you specialize like that and do those deep dives, you can start solving Rubik's Cubes in a day. I mean, making pictures in a day. But if you're not doing that, if instead you want to be the puzzle god of Jigsaw Mountain, whose diamond mine can peer through to the heart of any puzzle, no matter what the form, then you got to know these drawings are going to take a longer time, and that you need to make your peace with that and be patient enough for it. If you're going for a new problem with every drawing, then some amount of your time needs to be spent working on just asking, like, what's the question here? Imagine if you got one of those, the unique horseshoe puzzle, right? The weird metal puzzle. Imagine if you got it without the packaging or the instructions. It was just sitting on the table. You might not even know it's a puzzle at first. And then once you decided, yes, indeed, it must be a puzzle, as your brow creases, you then might start turning it around and asking, okay, so it's a puzzle, but what's the success condition of this puzzle? Do I succeed if I move the ring to the other side? Or do I succeed if I get the ring completely free? Or do I succeed if I get the ring to sit on the middle bar instead of the horseshoe? That's the very first step of making a drawing. If you're trying to expand and grow and get out of your comfort zone and think things through. So does that sound like it's rushable? No, it's not. You can't rush that. You need to give yourself time. Things take a while. And they take a while at work too. Don't get caught up with that old mistake where you're shooting yourself in the creative foot because you've heard you gotta be fast to work at companies and stuff like that. Maybe, but you're not gonna get there by making that a goal up front. You just get fast because you're more comfortable at solving problems, not by setting it up as something to be achieved for its own sake. That's only gonna make you sloppy and scared and thoughtless and replaceable. Besides, I've been the fast guy at work. You know what? It's not fun. It's not fun when everyone at the studio knows you can knock it out faster than anyone else, so they drop a fire drill in your lap every day. And you're like, please, I'm a human being on the outside, but on the inside, you're a neurotic self-loather with a lot of energy, with an inability to set boundaries, so you always get it done on time. And then you just make the problem worse because it's in the collective unconscious of the managers that if you squeeze a project to the end, it is still possible to get done as long as you can get this one person on it. Not fun. Not fun. Getting the normal projects that are on budget and on time, where everyone is chill and not rushing and actually trying to have good ideas and lackadaisically throwing hacky sacks up in the air from their beanbag thrones. Yeah, that's more fun. Do that instead if you can. Trust me, it's way more fun. My year-end bonuses were not a great antidote to my shattered nerves. So am I making my point here? Don't rush. There's no need to rush. It's very, very, very hard not to rush if you're prone to that. But it is a very important thing to be able to control and mitigate. It is a worthy goal to go for on your art journey. I feel like artists who are temperamentally inclined to not rush and give themselves all the time they feel they need and to draw like someone who has just sat down to an expensive and delicious dinner, I feel like they start off with a superpower. And the rest of us who are naturally inclined to think we're starting from failure and every passing breath is evidence of our artistic mediocrity, we have to struggle valiantly just to get back to a natural and healthy-minded starting place. I suggest that you take your time as the mighty oak tree does, growing tall and strong and glorious in its own due course, fully confident that its great work is immune to the harrying of time. It grows its mighty boughs where there is enough light, it puts forth leaves as it pleases, and its acorn falls to the forest floor when it's just heavy enough. Yes, that is the way. Put down your pencils, journey forth into that sacred wood and relinquish your soft human body and transmogrify into a beautiful and very literal tree. Burst forth in your new bark-covered form. Let the familiar light of this old sun scan hotly over an unknown tapestry of burls, twigs, offshoots, and creeping ivy. How beautifully you twist, how strange the loping corkscrews of your grasping arms. My God, the way your rough bark gives way to the smooth wood underneath. My goodness, you're beautiful and so much better at drawing. I promise. You're going to be like way more popular on Instagram now because you did that. Cool. Okay, should we get out of here? It might be about that time. As always, thank you for drawing today and for adding some of your creativity to this world. It benefits the net quality of conscious experience on this plane of existence, and that's a great gift for you to give everyone and yourself. If you're feeling good in your practice lately, I wish that feeling to grow golden and glowing and that it spill sloppily out of its vessel and pour over your whole body and melt it down into a warm puddle of homogeneous, joyous ambrosia. And if you're having trouble with your practice, all I wish for you is that you find it in you to not worry about it. Take care.